It is now my pleasure to introduce our main speaker, Rob B. from Covina.
Hi, my name's Rob, I'm alcoholic. And I'm going to put this over here. Is that all right? You do not want me having one of those. I want to thank Bruce and Lynn. I would drive anywhere in the world for Bruce, Angelette, and Lynn. Huge parts of my sobriety for the last 28 years. Following them in Alcoholics Anonymous gave me the life that I'm getting ready to tell you about. And I want to thank George for coming up with us and my wife, Kristen. And especially I want to say thank you to my aunt. I have an aunt who's here, so now you know you're really getting the truth. My Aunt Laura. I drug her through my addiction without even knowing that she was here. So that's a story all by itself, and we only have like 40 minutes. So I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I got to start off by telling you that. I don't want anyone to ever be confused with the fact I absolutely love Alcoholics Anonymous. And Junior, you got up here and you already told my story, right? Your favorite drink, right? My favorite drink comes in all kinds of different forms, but this is Alcoholics Anonymous, and this place saved my life, and that is the cold, hard fact for a guy like me. And I have to tell you that in my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought I was different. I absolutely thought I was different. And I walked into that meeting, and an old man changed my life. See, but that's not where this story starts. I didn't start drinking or doing anything like that until I was 8. Held off a little bit, wanted to make sure, right? And if I'd have known that a program called Alcoholics Anonymous was going to one day save my life, I would have drank first. But that's not what happened. See, prior to being 8, like when I was 7, and 6 and 5, I lived with my mom, right? My mom and dad got divorced when I was like 6 months old, right? And a lot of people, when little kids, you always say, oh my God, I wish my parents would get back together. I have to tell you, I never once in my entire life said, man, these two people should get married again. They were absolutely 100% opposite. And from the time I was a baby until I was 8 years old, I lived with my mom. That meant that I lived in chaos. I lived in madness. And when I say that, it's when my mom was a biker, right? I grew up, I was in Harbor City. My mom was, ran around with the bikers and all this kind of stuff. And what that meant is on the weekends, that really meant that my grandma raised me. But on the weekends, my mom would go off to these bike runs, right? And then she'd come back and bring my new dad. And you guys laugh, but that's like true, right? Like I'm not lying, right? It's what happened. But she'd go off on these runs. She'd come back with my new dad, and I was supposed to be super excited about it. And all it did was really make me get confused. And what happened for a kid like me is she decided that we were going to move, and she got married one more time, and they moved to Oklahoma, and they opened a bar, which is a real good thing for an alcoholic woman to do in a brand new relationship, to run to Oklahoma and open a bar. And my mom did that, right? And it was like a redneck Indian bar, which is odd, but it's the truth. And so I grew up living above this bar. We had a double wide out in the God knows where, and that was what we called the ranch. But we really lived above the bar. And at 6, 7 years old, I thought that was the coolest thing in the world, right? I could run around, I could do whatever I want. Well, then one morning, my mom and I came down from upstairs at the bar, and my stepdad, I don't even remember his name, was cut up on his head. And my mom was like, oh my God, what happened? And he looked at her and he said, you don't remember? And she said, no. And he said, last night you got mad and you hit me with a bar stool. And I guess that was my first experience with people having blackouts. And my dad found out, and he said, you know what, maybe it's time that Robbie comes and lives with me. Maybe it's time that Robbie comes and lives with me. And my mom drove me back from Oklahoma in an old Pinto, and we pulled up at my dad's house, and it was culture shock for a kid like me. See, my dad had remarried. They had my sister already, and and they wanted to do weird things, right? It was like moving in with Ozzie and Harriet, if you're not too young for that, right? And what that means is like at 5 o'clock, they sat down and had dinner, right? They did like family things. We didn't do that at the bar, right? And then they wanted to do something extremely crazy, like my dad wanted to talk. And he would ask me weird things like, so son, how was your day? And that threw a kid like me off, right? I was used to wearing my mom's old concert T-shirts and being able to do whatever I want and just making my new stepdad happy because I could show him I could do the Harley stomp, and stuff like that. So it was really odd for me to be in this family setting. And what happened is I met my new friends, right, on the way to the bus stop, and they were the kids from up the street, and they stole some weed. Now, if I'd have known the program called Alcoholics Anonymous, like I said, was going to save my life, I would have told them, no, we need to get some alcohol. But they showed up and they had stole weed from their brother and they said, hey man, do you want some? And I didn't hear them say, hey, do you want to spend your young adulthood locked up? I didn't hear them say, hey, do you want your family not to trust you? I didn't hear them say, hey, do you want your family to ship you off to your aunt's house in Camarillo? Right? I didn't hear them say any of that stuff. What I heard them say is, here, kid, do you want to fit in? Right? And I had a hole in my gut that was already so big that I needed to fit in somewhere. I needed something. So I started smoking weed with these guys every day, right? And when they couldn't steal weed, we'd just roll up paper and act like we were smoking weed. And for a kid like me, that was like what I needed. I needed something. I was looking for something. Now, I didn't turn into a heroin addict at 9. I wasn't a pimp by 10. Nothing like that, right? Like, it was one of those things. And but once I got to high school, I started finding the people that I fit in with, right? The partiers, right? We had the kegger parties, and we had all this different stuff going on. I'm a freshman in high school, and the basketball team had won CIF or something, or they were going to CIF, and someone said, hey, man, we're having a party. And I'm like, I'm in, right? It's like Tuesday, second period. Perfect, right? And so we all ditch school, and we go off, and my parents live in San Dimas, right? San Dimas, sounds really nice, right? So we went to San Dimas Canyon to go have this party, and I'm up there, and I'm the youngest kid there, right? And I don't know if I was the only kid that was one day going to be an alcoholic, but, we're up there, and we're partying, and someone yells, hey, the cops are here. And everybody starts freaking out. Now, I'm alcoholic, I'm not stupid, right? I know if the cops are here, the party's going to be over, right? So they're putting their beers down, I'm picking their beers up, right? They're putting the bottle down, I'm picking it up. And I'm finishing off because I know the cops are here and the party's over, right? I'm not dumb, right? So the cops come in and they gather all of us up and they have us outside and they're getting ready. They're going to take us all back to school. We're going to get that lecture, right? They brought like 5 cop cars, and every cop car, they're stuffing kids in, right? And these cop cars are pulling up in front of the school, and the school security guards are out there, and the vice principal's out there. Everybody's out there going to watch these kids get paraded in. And the kids are all getting out of the car. They're all depressed, they're going to get in trouble, da-da-da-da. Well, the last cop car that pulled up only had one person in it. It was the only person that ended up in handcuffs that day. He was the youngest guy that was there, and that was me. And as everybody else is getting out of that car, and they're looking depressed and sad, like their parents are going to be on them, I got out of that car, and I was the proudest I had ever been, right? Look at me. Look at me, right? I had found something to fill that hole that I had in my gut. I found it. Right? And it was that attention. It was all those different things, right? And I got out of that car and I walked up as proud as all hell. And I'm sitting in the vice principal's office and everybody else is on their way home, right? And I'm sitting in there and I played baseball. I played football. I knew a long time ago, at that point, I already knew that if I'm playing football and I'm playing baseball and I'm doing all these things, then my dad's not watching what I'm doing over here, right? So if I'm doing all the things that he thinks that a good kid's doing, right, then nobody's paying attention over here. See, and that day I'm sitting in that vice principal's office and my baseball coach walks by. And he looks in and he says, my God, Robbie, are you done ditching school and getting drunk? And I looked up at him. His name was Coach Coombs. looked up at him and I said, I don't know, Coach, I'm going to go home, have a beer, and I'm going to think about it. And he informed me I no longer played baseball for the San Dimas Saints, right? And I was okay with that right at that point because I already told you that hole was full. That hole was full. But there'll be a lot more that would tear that hole apart. You know, going from my freshman year through to my senior year, I graduated high school by the skin of my teeth, right? Matter of fact, I graduated high school delivering English books back to the library for extra credit that I didn't know my dad had begged the English teacher to let me do, right? Because by that point, I wasn't speaking to my dad. I wasn't speaking to my stepmom who raised me. I wasn't talking to them anymore. See, because the things I was doing weren't acceptable in their house, right? And I turned 18, I got that ultimatum, and that ultimatum, I split, right? I moved out, I was gone. And now I'm out running the streets doing all kinds of craziness. See, but that, I got to tell you, right? I'm a senior in high school, pretty much living on my own. That just means that I convinced my girlfriend's family that I needed to move in the garage, right? And I'm convincing everybody how it's my parents' fault, right? How they don't understand. They don't like me. They this, they that, right? And all I'm doing is still trying to fill that hole. Still trying to fill that hole, right? And I graduate by the skin of my teeth. And that English teacher, you know, let me get that credit, right? And so I make it, and I graduated high school, and my dad sat in a minivan off of the school property because I didn't invite him to the graduation, right? I didn't invite him to the graduation because I'm going to show them. No, my friends tried to give him tickets. Everybody tried to save Robbie, right? Everybody's trying to save Robbie. And all Robbie's trying to do is hurt people, right? All Robbie does when he's drinking and he's using is hurt people. See, so I ended up, like I said, I graduated and I started going around and I started doing all the other stuff that we do, right? And my parents would let me back in, and I would do something just god awful, and I'd have to go again. And then they let me back in. They gave me every shot that they could give me, right? And I was trying to fill that hole, and that's all I was trying to do. So I'm out and I'm running the streets. I don't know, 18, 19 years old, right? I've already started ruining careers and doing different things, and I get busted, right? Well, actually, I hadn't gotten busted yet. They called my dad to get me busted. And my dad calls me and says, son, I don't know what you're really getting into, but you're going to need to go turn yourself in. And I'm like, ain't going to happen, right? You're living the way I'm living. I ain't, sorry, not going to do it. And so I started getting arrested, and all these different things started happening, right? And I go back to my dad's, and now I'm getting involved in some different things, right? Because now all of a sudden I'm an entrepreneur, right? As we like to get, right? I'm a young businessman, right? I'm a young businessman, and I'm making things, and I'm doing things, and I think that the best place in the world to do that is when I'm back at home, right? That it's safe, right? No one would ever think that my dad and my stepmom my mom would be doing these things, right? So I'm doing it there, right? Now, what I can tell you is it doesn't matter how good your family is. If you're doing those things, they will show up, right? And I should let you know that I'm doing these things while my dad's a homicide investigator for the Los Angeles Police Department, right? My dad was very, very well respected in the police department, and here's his son that's just running through everything, right? Trying to fill that hole, trying to do all those different things. So what ends up happening for a guy like me is I start going to jail and I start getting in trouble. And the first time I got locked up was a long story that we don't need to get into. Everybody here knows how to get locked up, I'm sure. And if you don't, and you decide to drink, you'll figure it out. It's kind of like riding a bike. So what's ended up happening is I get out, right? I get out, and my dad and my mom are trying to help me. They're trying to do everything they can to help me. And my Aunt Laura offers me a place to stay. And they offer me a job. And my family says, this is what we need to do. We need to send Robbie to Camarillo. It's far enough away from the San Gabriel Valley that he can't get in trouble there, right? Never could get in trouble across county lines, right? I'm a proud graduate of Ventura County Jail, right? Yes. I'm one of the guys that believed them when they say if you get arrested in Camarillo, we promise we'll bring you back and drop you off. That's a lie, right? And I can tell you that I got to Camarillo and I just started doing the same things that I was doing back at home, right? And I'm tearing up things. I'm destroying everyone that loves me in my life. And my aunt, I can say that I'm the first person she's ever went to visit in a county jail, right? Everybody should have that experience. She brought the kids, right? She brought the kids and brought them to see me, and then was there when it was time to pick me up, right? And I couldn't figure out why my aunt's loving me so much. Why does she love me so much, right? And I get out and I'm sober, right? But what happens to a guy like me when I get out of jail and I end up back in the San Gabriel Valley or where I'm from, right? I'm loaded. One more time, I'm destroying things, right? I'm doing all those things that cause a guy like me to try to fill that hole in my gut, right? And so I'm running and gunning, and I like to say I was homeless. That just meant I was jumping from either hotel to my friend's garage or something like that, right? But everything was kind of crazy. And I got in trouble. I'm sorry, I got in trouble one more time, and I go before the judge, and the judge, you know, he's looking at me like they always do. If you drink or use the way I do, right? And I'm on my way down to the courtroom, and they tell me I have an attorney visit. I don't know about any of you people, but I'm a public defender kind of guy, right? I'm not a private lawyer kind of guy. And they said you have an attorney visit, and public defenders where I come from don't come and visit, right? They come in and say, here's the best deal you're going to get, and I take it, right? I'm like an old school deal taker, right? Because back when I was getting in trouble, you were doing like 3 months, 20 days on a year. That means you can knock out 3 years in 1 year, right? So if you got in trouble 3 times, you could just take the county. And that's what happened, right? I go in to see this attorney, and she picks up the phone and she says, Robbie, I need you to know that I'm not here for you, but you're killing your family. You're killing your father. I didn't hear that lady say anything about what was going on with my family or my father. What I heard that lady say is, you're going to get out. I'm a private lawyer, and I'm going to get you out. And she said, do you have a problem with drugs and alcohol? And at that point, I would have told her I had a problem with anything if I was going to get out. And I went down into the courtroom that day, and there were 2 people sitting in court. One was my dad, who had that look that we've all seen. If you have people that you hurt that loved you, that look like, where did I go wrong? What did I do? And the other one was my youngest sister, and she was there in her little Catholic schoolgirl outfit, because by that point my parents realized it was the public school system. So they went the private route after that. They're like, that obviously didn't work. And they were sitting there, and she was in tears, right? Her hero, the guy she looked up to, the guy who did her hair on picture day, is locked up one more time, shackled like a convict, walking into the courtroom. And I went in, and the judge said something that a lot of us might have heard if you've been in that situation. He said, Mr. Badar, men like you belong in the penitentiary. And that was not a news flash, right? Okay. He said, I'm going to do something today I can't believe I'm going to do. You're going to go to jail because you like to play with guns and all these different things, but you're not going to go to prison. You're going to go into a program. And I went, absolutely. Absolutely, that's what I need. I need a program. And so I went and I did my little bit of time that I had to do. And then I came up to Ventura to do my little violation. Then I went up north to do another little violation. And by the time I got back to the San Gabriel Valley, it was time for me to go into a program. My parents had this program all lined out for me. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for the easier, softer way. And so I get back home. And I walk in, my dad's out of town, my mom's there, and she says, I say, okay, I just need to go see my friends before tomorrow when we're going to take me to this program. And I left there, and I went to this woman's house. It was the woman that I was seeing right before I got sober, or right before I got busted, right? And I knock on her door, and a friend of mine answers her door. Not odd, I left him there 6 months earlier, right? Why would I not think he'd still be there? And I said, hey, man, where's she at? And he goes, dude, I don't know what you guys talked about, but she got sober. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, she said something about you guys were going to turn your lives around. And I was like, well, I didn't mean any of that. So he told me where she was at, and I ran to this recovery home in Covina, and I went up and I knocked on the door because I needed to save this woman. And when the door opened at this recovery house, the owner of the recovery house answered the door, and I didn't realize, I didn't know anything about recovery homes. I didn't know anything about any of that stuff. And what happened for me that day is like a bunch of women stood up, and I was like, how do I check into this spot, right? And it was a female recovery home, and I thought that it would be a great place for me. And that woman started telling me how wonderful it was to be sober. See, and the next day I worked it out where I could go into that recovery house, right? And I went back home, and I told my mom that this is where I need to go. I gave her this long line of crap, right? I need to build a wall of AA friends. I need to build a community where I'm going to live. I gave her all this really good stuff. And then she called the owner of the recovery home, and the dude backed me up on everything. Well, it'll be real good if he can build a wall of AA friends. He's going to need to live in the community, da-da-da-da. And I was like, this guy's all right. Now, I was lying. He was telling the truth. That was the difference. And the next day, I was supposed to go check into that place, and I found out what it talks about in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous about me being absolutely defenseless against the first drink. See, because I went into a situation with absolutely no tools. My tools were lying, cheating, stealing, right? Those are my tools. And those even got me to be able to get a bed at that recovery house. I was lying, cheating, and stealing already. And the next day when I'm supposed to go check into that place, I stopped at a friend of mine's house, and I got stuck for like 12 hours, right? And I rushed back to my parents' house. There was a lot of stuff happening in between, but I rushed back to my parents' house, and I'm crying. I'd already been in a car accident. I've been out of jail 36 hours. I'm loaded. I'm in a car accident, and I'm trying to convince my mom that, they can't have a bed for me till tomorrow, right? And I'm laying there, and I start crying, and I start praying to a God that at that point I had no idea. I didn't even understand. God, please get me out of this one more time. And the next day I checked into that recovery house, and they took me to a program called Alcoholics Anonymous at the 502 Club, the sobriety capital of the world. And I got to be honest with you, the reason why, someone asked me earlier, why do they call the Covina the sobriety capital of the world? It's because we have a banner that says it. That is why, right? There's nothing else I can tell you. There's a banner on the wall. It looks like a carpet, but it is a banner. We've had this discussion for years, right? And what I was taught in Covina is if you don't think that your home group is the sobriety capital of your world, then you need to move, right? I started feeling for my friend from Beatty. I'm like, ooh, I've been to Beatty. Sobriety capital of something, right? Boy, Beatty, if you've never been to Beatty, Nevada, don't blink. Don't blink. But welcome. Welcome. It's I'm sure you didn't get sober there, did you? Yeah, I didn't think so. That's awesome. But like I said, they tell me I'm going to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I have this long discussion. Oh, I better hurry up. I have this long discussion with them about I'm not alcoholic, right? I'm an addict. I'm this, I'm that, right? In my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I get told the secret of Alcoholics Anonymous by a really old man. The really old man waddled over to where I was at. I identified myself, and I said, my name's Rob. I'm an alcoholic, and I'm an addict. And I threw an emphasis on that because they said it pissed off the old guys. And it did, right? And this old guy waddled over next to me, and he said, son, you're an alcoholic, and that's all you are. If you come in here and you try to be different from all of us, you're going to die drunk. But if you come in here and you look for the similarities and you stop looking for the differences, then the program that's working for all of us can work for you, right? I still believe this very day. That's the secret of Alcoholics Anonymous. See, because I can come in here and I can be different from all of you people, and all of a sudden, Alcoholics Anonymous isn't going to work for me because I'm different, right? But I come in here and I look for the similarities and I stop looking for the differences. Then all of a sudden your steps, your program, all that can work for me. And I'm blessed. I'm absolutely blessed. See, I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous from the gate. I didn't have a choice. I showed up in a group of doers, right? That's how I met Bruce Angelette, right? Because I showed up to a group of doers, right? I started getting involved in conventions, and Bruce taught me how to do convention work, right? We lived on opposite sides of the county, and we came together once a year for 28 years, right? He didn't tell me how to do it. He showed me how to do it. That's what we do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. We show you how to get sober. And if you don't have people in your life that are showing you how to work the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I suggest you find other people, because that is my life. My life is absolutely unbelievable because of a program called Alcoholics Anonymous. And when I say I love it, I mean I love it, right? I met my wife. She probably told you guys the story when she was here. Don't believe it, right? I walked into a meeting one day. I'm with all my friends. We're over here in the corner, right? I like to refer to all of them as the vultures. I'm a savior. They're vultures, right? And everyone's like, dude, who's that? And so I jumped up. I needed to go save this woman. And I rushed over, and I knew she was new, right? And I care so much about what Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me. I know the biggest sin in Alcoholics Anonymous is to get in front of someone else's recovery, to put something in front of someone else's recovery. And thank God that my old timers beat that into my head. And so I ran over and I gave this young lady the best AA pickup line that I could muster. And I said, honey, you need to stay sober so one day I can take you out. And she looked at me like, you're a douchebag. And I turned on my heels and I walked back over to where my friends were at and I said, got it. Done, right? We're going to be married 18 years this year, right? Because Alcoholics Anonymous, it's not always perfect, but it's a hell of a lot better than it would have been if we never found Alcoholics Anonymous. My life is not perfect by any stretch, but it sure looks a hell of a lot different than it would have if I wouldn't have found AA, right? So that old man became my sponsor because of the exact same reason I told you Bruce is my friend. Because that old man showed me how to do AA, he didn't tell me, right? And I'll never forget the day that old man passed. His name was Harvey Angers, okay? That old man, the day that old man passed, it was 5:30 in the morning, and I called George. And I said, I don't know if God loves you or hates you, but you're stuck with me. And the reason why George has been my sponsor since the day Harvey passed is because George shows me how to do Alcoholics Anonymous. He doesn't tell me. See, and at 20 years of recovery, when I thought all bets were off, right? I was going through a horrible part of my sobriety. With 20 years, right? I'm trying to act like I've got it all together, and I'm dying on my inside. And I'm driving down the 605 freeway thinking if I hang a left, I'll end it all, right? And that's with 20 years of sobriety. And luckily, I had a man in my life that was man enough to step up or loved me enough to step up and say, you know what, kid? You're going to drink. And I said, dude, I'm not going to drink, man. I will not give them the satisfaction of me drinking. And he said, you're going to drink if you're lucky. And what he told me that day was, it's time to get back to basics, right? It's time to get back to basics. And you'll be at my shop, and you'll bring your book, and we'll start at step 1. And we work the steps all over again. And what I have to tell you is that if it wasn't for that, I would have never saw 21. If it wasn't for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous working in my life, I would have never saw 21. And I know that. I know that for a fact. See, my life's not perfect in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like I said, it's a hell of a lot better than it would have been if I never found it, right? And the truth is that with my wife came these two beautiful little girls, and they were super little thin, right? Back then, they were super littles. And when I married Kristen, I married those two girls, and they're my girls, They're mine. I'm the only daddy those two girls have, right? And then about 13 and a half years ago now, Kristen said, I want to have a baby. I want to give you a sober baby. And I'm like, hey, we got the girls, right? And they're like a few years away from us being free, right? Like, they're almost off the books, right? And she, but I really want to give you a sober baby. And it wasn't happening. It didn't happen. It wasn't happening. And doctor said it's probably not going to happen. And we found acceptance. We found acceptance. And it's crazy how things happen, right? As soon as you find acceptance in Alcoholics Anonymous, miracles happen. Miracles happen. And I got home and she said, guess what? And I was like, yay! Scared to death. Scared to absolute death, right? And we have a 12-year-old, almost 13-year-old little boy who's built like a brick. He's a good-sized young man, all right? And he has got to be the sweetest, most kind kid I've ever met in my entire life. And it has. People try to say, oh, my God, you're parenting. You guys have done a great job parenting. We cannot take credit for any of that. This kid's heart is so amazing, and it has nothing to do with us, right? And I guess it does have something to do with my wife. She's perfect. But, you know, the truth is that we have this sober family, right? We have a sober family, and the reason why he is the way he is because of the lives that we live in Alcoholics Anonymous, period, right? That dad who I told you I disrespected over and over and over again, my stepmother who never gave up on me, and I thought she hated me, right? But she never gave up on me, ever, right? Today they have a sober son who they know will show up if they call, right? And my sister, my middle sister, the one that was at that very first dinner, right? That very first dinner, she's got 25 years. Right? She followed her brother. And I like to take, no, I won't do that. But I tried to be a good example, right? And she lives a pretty damn good life. And then my other sister, she followed Dad, and she still loves me too. So it's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good. And I'm supposed to be watching for a sign. If I take my glasses off, we can go all night, right? Because I won't be able to see it. So I have to tell you, I told you, when I got involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, I got super excited, right? And then all of a sudden, some amazing, it ain't going to happen. Some amazing things started happening, right? Like I got this phone call one day, and they're like, hey, we would really like you to come over and share your story at a high school. And I was like, I would love to come and see that. I'm going to go share my story at the school, save the kids. Right? And so I rush over, and it's at Bonita High School. I go to Bonita High School. I graduated from San Dimas. They're like our rivals, right? So if I didn't help any of them, I could still be okay. I'm just kidding. Jesus, criminy. The high school games. So I go and I share my story at this class, right? And after I'm done, the teacher says, hey, that was great. Would you like to, could you share with another class? And I'm like, see that? God's working through me, right? Of course I could share with another class. So she goes, okay, it'll be right after lunch. Our vice principal is retiring, so we're having a little luncheon. Why don't you come to the teacher's lounge, and we'll celebrate him, and then you can come talk after that. And I say, okay, that would be great. And we walk out of the class, and as we're walking across the quad, I hear this, Robbie Badar? And I stop. And it was the school security guard from when I was in high school who watched me get out of that police car. Her name was Mary. And Mary came running over to me, and she said, you're the person talking to the classes? And I said, yes, Mary, I am. And she started to cry. She said, I never thought you would make it. I never thought you would make it. And I go, oh, Mary, I'm good. I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I gave her the whole AA pitch. And so we walk on and we go to the teacher's lounge. And I walk in and they say, oh, let us introduce you to our vice principal. You know, he's retiring. And I go up and they say, Mr. Coombs, we'd like you to meet our speaker for the class. And he turns around and goes, Robbie Badar? And I'm like, hey, coach. And he said, really, you're the one talking to the class? And I said, yeah. He said, I never thought you'd make it. I never thought you'd make it. See, but full circle in Alcoholics Anonymous. My life is better than anything I could ever imagine, right? Better than anything I could ever imagine because I've been taught how to suit up, show up, and shut up, right? And that sometimes is the biggest part, right? Now, that little boy that we have, that I told you how sweet and innocent he is, right? I'm trying to get him to wrestle, right? Like he's wrestling, right? I was just talking to our gentleman in the back, right? And I told you how kind and loving this kid is, right? You know how hard it is to tell a kid that's really kind and loving, like you got to get in there and so that's our challenge. That's our challenge, right? I figure he's going to get his butt whipped a few times and then it's going to happen. But our lives are so full, man. Our lives are absolutely so full in Alcoholics Anonymous. Why would I want to do anything else? So if I could, now you can give me the 5-minute thing. That's better, because I'm afraid I'll get smacked. Right? I feel abused. So what I can tell you, and I've said it over and over again, is that I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and if a program called Alcoholics Anonymous can save a guy like me, it can save anybody. Thank you.